Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Ball?
Present.
Mr. Kozer?
Here.
We could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item we have this evening is a public meeting. The purpose of this evening's public hearing is to accept comments on the proposed 2019 budget and the 2019-2023 capital improvement program. This evening's hearing was advertised in the Observer Reporter, on the Township's website, and on the cable television message board. Mr. Lauer?
Yes. As council is aware, we have been working on the budget over the last couple months. I think the other thing that council recognizes is that of all the functions we do every year, there is nothing more important than the adoption of the budget. I thought this quote from Robert Carey, who is the former manager of Charlotte, North Carolina, kind of puts it succinctly when he says at the end, local budgets determine who gets what services, how much they get, and who pays. And I think sometimes what's lost on residents is that it's this process by which the township takes what it perceives to be the needs and desires of the community and actually turns them into an operational plan for the upcoming year. The township's budget is projecting revenues of $22,592,000 and expenditures in excess of $27,900,000. Part of that has to do with the fact that we have a number of capital projects that we're going to be undertaking that will either spend down monies that have been set aside for that purpose, or the other thing that the budget contains is a commitment to borrow funds to undertake capital projects, particularly those associated with the development of the Rolling Hills Park and the road that services it. The ability of any municipal government to achieve its goals are determined principally by its capacity to raise funds. Peters Township is not unique in its sources of funds for financing municipal operations. They are divided between tax and non-tax sources. Tax revenues principally come from the real estate tax and the earned income tax. The real estate tax levy this year is 1.622 mills. There is no projected increase in that tax for the upcoming year. Earned income tax receipts are actually up this year, and in speaking with representative of Keystone Collection, they are up throughout Washington County, and we think that is a reflection of what has been an upturn in the oil and gas industry over the last year and a half. In addition to that, a significant source of funds for the township is money associated with the deed-transfer tax. And, part of the idea of that levy is to be able to have people who are moving into the community to contribute to some of the capital expense that's associated with the need for increase in maintaining infrastructure. Non-tax revenues, there are three significant sources in 2019. One of them is grants, and we're going to go through that a little bit in more detail. The township's been fortunate to attain a number of categorical grants to help offset some capital expenditures. But in addition to that, we receive transfers from the state of Pennsylvania in the form of liquid fuels tax, foreign fire insurance, foreign casualty insurance, and those are transfers that we receive every year. In terms of fees, the most significant of those fees are, of course, associated with the fees associated with the collection and disposal of solid waste. And if there is an increase in in rates, it's in that area. As council is aware, this year, the South Hills Area Council of Governments Purchasing Alliance bid solid waste services, collection and disposal. Those rates that were bid came in significantly higher than what they had been for the previous 5-year contract. So we are seeing a rate increase per quarter that has increased from $51 to $67. And so that is a very significant increase in that cost of that service. In terms of other, what that principally references is contributions that the township will be receiving from the Peters Township School District to pay for half their share of the construction of Rolling Hills Drive, which will occur next year. In terms of expenditures, when the state looks at this, they divide municipal functions into 4 categories: general government, public works, protections of persons and properties, and culture and recreation. When you look at this in aggregate, the amount that is being spent on public works seems disproportionately high to where it would normally be, but that is a reflection principally of the fact that we have these large roadway construction projects next year in the park. But beyond that, what you see when you look at in terms of the operating expenses, this relationship of the size of public works to public safety to culture and recreation pretty much is the same as it has been in the past. So, 25% of the budget is from an operating perspective is associated with the Public Works Department. 28% is public safety. If you add in the planning department, that brings that number actually to 30%. And then when you look at the items under leisure and recreation activities, that's another 12%. The general government, which includes the manager's office, the business office, tax collection, network support, represents 10% of the proposed expenditures for next year. Within the budget, next year, 37% of the budget is made up of capital expenditures. Of those, I've listed what I believe to be significant one-time expenditures that we would not normally see within our budget. There is a critical need for improvements to the emergency communication systems for fire and for police. In addition to that, as council is aware, we have a traffic and signal improvement plan for the intersection of East McMurray Road and Valley Brook Road and Thomas Road. The expense for Rolling Hills Drive, the construction of Rolling Hills Drive. We have a number of improvements that are scheduled for Peterswood Park, including playground improvements and a shelter construction. There are improvements proposed for the library, including a new roof for the building and some interior improvements. We are going to increase the fleet in the Public Works Department by 1 additional large truck, and this has to do with the fact that the amount of road miles continues to increase in the township, and particularly with Rolling Hills Drive will add additional roadways which will need to be maintained. And then also in the budget is a one-time purchase for a leaf vacuum and a limb chipper. The thing to keep in mind when looking at these is that where the township has a fair amount of its own money invested in these projects, we have been able to acquire funding from other sources that be able to offset some of those costs. So, with regard to the traffic signal, $383,000 is a grant from the state of Pennsylvania. In terms of Rolling Hills Drive, there's a contribution from the school district, but in addition to that, we are earmarking traffic improvement fees that we have collected over the years as developments go in to help offset that cost and avoid having to expend township monies on those. The improvements in the park are funded almost 50% by a grant which has been acquired from the state of Pennsylvania. And in terms of the leaf vacuum and the limb chipper, you can see that the vast majority of that money is actually coming out of a state grant as opposed to the township's funds. Finally, the thing that I always say about local government is that if you want to address issues that affect the budget, you look at two things. You look at capital projects and you look at personnel costs. We do have some changes that are accommodated for within the proposed budget, and the first of which is the retirement of the fire chief. There will be some funds set aside to provide for an overlap of the fire chief and the new fire chief and the deputy fire chief, which will be hired. In addition, one of the positions that we intend to create is an assistant park and recreation director. Now, this will come back to council because there'll have to be a job description created for that job. The principal function of that position will be as another programming officer inside the park and rec department. But in addition to that, we need to have someone in that department, as we have done with other departments, that can either, one, become the next park and rec director, if that's opportunity presents itself, or in the absence of Michelle Harmel, to have someone there who can hold the department together while we search for a new park and rec director. And like I said, I think that was one of the lessons we learned from a couple of years ago when we went through that transition with all these department heads, and we've pretty much been able to accommodate this in all of the departments with the exception of the Parks and Rec department at this point. As we've discussed with council, when we took over the Rolling Hills Country Club, the portion of the park that we own is about the equivalent of having to maintain another Peterswood Park. And to do that without increasing the staffing in the Public Works Department means that there are other jobs that aren't getting done. And so what we're talking about doing next year is increasing the staffing by one laborer. And finally, we have a position in the library that is a library assistance position. We're looking at transitioning that from a part-time position to a full-time status. So that's a summary of what's in the budget. Our intention is in December to adopt the budget. That could be occurring at the first meeting in December, but if not, it will be at the second. So if council has any questions or if residents have comments.
We all spend a lot of time preparing the budget with a variety of different workshops, so I don't think anyone might have any comments from council. Okay, this time we'll open it up to anyone from the public that would like to come up and discuss the budget. Try to limit this to about 5 minutes if we can.
Ron Books, 855 Beebot Road. I want to frame this as a question dealing with appropriations. Now, I'm not talking about capital investment. I'm talking about routine investment in efficiency improvements. Exactly how much does the township spend on evaluating its effectiveness in different departments and implementing the best and most efficient technology?
Well, one of the exercises that we go through and at the direction of council is that when department heads were charged with developing their budgets this year is to take a look at those types of initiatives they have gone through in the prior year to increase efficiency and effectiveness, and to look at the upcoming year to do that same thing. I don't know that I can quantify, that in terms of hours or dollars spent to do that, but one of the approaches that I've always appreciated about Peters Township is the expectation of council has been, since I've been here, is that Peters Township deliver the biggest bang for the buck, and we're well aware of that, and everything we approach is on that kind of basis.
Evolutionarily speaking, what kind of innovations might we expect within the next 2 to 3 years?
I don't know, Ron, that I can sit here and tell you that off the top of my head, but I can't tell you that off the top of my head, Ron, but you want to stop in to the office, you and I can sit down and talk about that.
Well, very simply, the reason I bring that up is my impression is the traffic in the township seems to be becoming more of a problem for everyday commuters. And I'm just hoping that somewhere in the formula we can find something that will help relieve some of that traffic congestion. I think it'll only continue to rise unless we take some affirmative action. Thank you.
Mr.
All right.
Lower, if I could just interject. I think one of the things that would demonstrate some technical improvement is the GIS program that Mr. Zemaitis is working on, so that we can get a better handle on and be more predictive of issues that might happen with infrastructure between the storm sewer, the roads, and all the other things. So that's one example of some technology we've invested in, is if that gets to some of your questions.
I would also note that we've spent an awful lot of time with regard to the traffic issue talking about a predictive light system on 19, which is a joint project with PennDOT. We've talked about using simulations to look at some of the traffic changes that we're planning in the township. So we're not devoid of technology. We use it where we can, and as Mr. Lauer said, every time we go into a budget, each of the department heads has to justify why he wants what they're asking and what they're doing to improve their process. What are their 2 or 3 major initiatives to reduce costs or improve their services?
A big element of the traffic improvement in the budget that we just put up, $400 and some odd thousand for the traffic light here in Valley Brook and Township.
Yeah, and the intention is at this intersection is to use adaptive signal technology so that in fact you have a smart signal that moves traffic through that intersection. When that when that new light goes in at Rolling Hills Drive, the intention is to look at to see whether or not it makes sense to be actually interconnect these signals in terms of their adaptive technology, so that you're actually beginning to look at a run that goes the whole way down East McMurray Road. So,
All right, is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to come up and talk about the budget?
John McCarthy, 105 Greenbrier Drive. I'm glad to see the money appropriated to Peters Township Library, and I can tell you any money they get is very well spent. So thank you.
I would agree with you.
Would concur. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to talk about the budget?
I think we were all very favorably reacting to what's happened in the library with our new staff and programs and the attention it's getting throughout the community and actually out through the entire county.
the programming continues to be amazing. In fact, right now, from the German embassy, there is an economic development officer who's doing a presentation in the Peters Township Library. And they're here today, and to give you an idea of that relationship, they're here today at the University of Pittsburgh tomorrow doing a presentation. So
that's awesome. All right. Anyone else from council?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We adjourn the public hearing portion of this evening's meeting. All right, next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the meeting held on November 12th, 2018.
So moved.
All All right, I will not vote because I was not at that meeting, as I was welcoming my 5th grandchild to the world.
Getting old.
My little Cinco. All right, all those in favor, we have a motion, a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That would be 501. All right, special reports. Tonight, we have some special reports. We have some very special people. We have with us the introduction of the new Peters Township police officers.
Council, thanks for the opportunity to introduce to you our newest officers. It's a great privilege of mine to be able to introduce them to you. I'm going to read you a little bit of their background, if you will, just to get you a little bit more familiar with them. First, I'd like to introduce Rachel Harper. Rachel was born and raised in Carroll Township, graduated from Ringgold High School in 2008. Her parents, Ronald and Cynthia, continue to reside in Carroll Township. Rachel's engaged to be married to Andrew Jacobs in February, who's here tonight as well. And, Rachel is the youngest in her family and has one older brother. Upon graduation from high school, Rachel attended Washington and Jefferson College, where she majored in psychology and did concentrations in professional writing and entrepreneurial studies. Ultimately, she graduated from Slippery Rock University with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, where she was inducted into the Psi-Chi and the International Honor Society in Psychology. Rachel's also completed a minor in communications and assisted in the reestablishment of the Slippery Rock University pre-law program. Upon graduation from Slippery Rock University, Rachel attended the Westmoreland County Community College Police Academy. Upon graduation, she accepted employment with the Forward Township Police Department in Allegheny County and then Westmoreland County Park Police. In 2016, Rachel accepted a position with the City of Pittsburgh and immediately attended the Pittsburgh Police Academy. Upon graduation from that police academy, Rachel was assigned to Zone 1 and then transferred to Zone 5. During her time with the Pittsburgh Police Department, Rachel worked with narcotics and vice in plainclothes capacity. And in her most recent assignment, she was selected to work with the City of Pittsburgh Housing Authority on a collaborative, community-oriented policing initiative with a focus on drug and violent crime intervention in Northview Heights and the Allegheny dwellings. So I introduce you Rachel Harper. Next up is Connor Wolfhard. Connor was born and raised in South Hills. He graduated from Mount Lebanon High School in 2010. His parents, Ray and Sheila, continue to reside in the South Hills area. Connor is the youngest of 4 siblings and has 2 older brothers and 1 older sister. Upon graduation from high school, he attended California University of Pennsylvania, where he obtained his bachelor's degree in criminal justice in 2014. While studying at California University of Pennsylvania, Connor was a student athlete and a member of the men's soccer team. Upon graduation from Cal U, Connor accepted a position with the City of Pittsburgh Police Department and immediately attended the Pittsburgh Police Academy. Upon graduation from the Police Academy, Connor was assigned to Zone 6 and ultimately transferred to Zone 2. In addition to his patrol assignment, Connor was also a member of the Pittsburgh Police Department Special Response Team. I introduce to you Connor Wolfhard. Last, Spencer Scott. Spencer was born and raised in Upper St. Clair, graduated from Upper St. Clair High School in 2009. His parents, Mark and Fran, continue to reside in the Pittsburgh metropolitan area. Spencer is the oldest of 3 siblings. He has a younger brother and a younger sister. Upon graduation from high school, Spencer attended Ohio University, where he obtained his bachelor's degree in sociology and psychology. Upon graduation from Ohio University, Spencer accepted a position with the City of Pittsburgh and immediately attended the Pittsburgh City Police Academy. Upon graduation from the Police Academy, he was assigned to Zone 2. It's significant to note Spencer was the first officer in the City of Pittsburgh to use Narcan on a victim suffering from an overdose, and as a result, Spencer was awarded the Public Safety Distinguished Service Award. All 3 of our officers are extremely excited about joining the Peters Township Police Department and the opportunity to protect and serve the members of this community, those who work and traverse through the community. I introduce to you Spencer Scott.
All right, thanks, Chief.
Now, before the chief leaves, and Captain Ford is here as well, one of the things that I distributed to you is the latest set of policies that are proposed for the police department. Our intention is to put those on the agenda for adoption in the first or second meeting in December. The reason why they were distributed tonight is to give you an opportunity to review them. If you have questions or concerns with regard to them, I would suggest that you contact Chief Grimes to speak to those. There are 2 additional policies that we hope to be able to have in final form so that they can be included when those are going to be adopted. We're going to strive to get that done, but there's communications right now between the police department and the solicitor with regard to those 2.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to the Peters Township Police Force, and just be safe out there, all right?
Welcome.
Mr. Berquist, before you move on, there were a couple other transitions that I thought you might want to know about. Matt Blosh is retiring after 37 years of service to Peters Township. Matt has served this community as a mechanic inside the Public Works Department. He's not only skilled at his job, but he's devoted to that job. He is always there when the Public Works Department's out. So he is going to be missed. Matt also served as the union steward for the Public Works Department, and he represented the workers there well, but at the same time, he was somebody that had the respect of both Mike Sylvester and myself in terms of doing that job. 2 other transitions I just wanted to bring to your attention. Harry Verilato recently passed away, and he serves on the Peters Township Planning Commission. But probably what Harry is most known for in terms of the township is the service he did with regard in support of the library. He was a force with regard to the Face of the Township program for many years, and that program was successful in raising significant sums of money for support of the library. So he's truly going to be missed. And the other person who recently passed away is Bob Buck. Bob served on the Peters Township Cable Board for many years, but even before Bob's involvement on the cable board, Bob was the person who took charge of having the masses at St. Benedict's videotaped and having them available for broadcast by the local cable channel. So both of these people are going to be sorely missed, and it's once again one of the things that separates this community from other communities is the quality of the volunteers that we get, and these 2 are both very much evidence of that.
Thank you for that, Mr. Lauer. All right, next item on the agenda is the point in the meeting where we allow audience comments. This is limited to 5 minutes and would be a discussion on a non-agenda item.
Hi, my name is Joanne Moore. My husband and I have lived at 114 Greenbrier Drive since 1975. I think many of you will remember that on September 10th, I attended a council meeting along with a number of other people on our street where we discussed the community option home and that we were getting another group home for mentally challenged people. Mrs. Merle approached us when we sat down and told us that there has been a solicitor's report generated about this, and we all have been wondering about it. But when we came here, I had also told you that this same landlord owned 109 Greenbrier Drive, and it was rumored that the tenant was moving. That tenant has moved, and the house has been undergoing repairs, and it is now for rent. We were told the other day that there's a possibility that it is going to be rented as a halfway house. A halfway house. I don't even know what to say. And my understanding is that there is a halfway house on Kimber Drive in Peters Township. Is the township informed about this type of stuff?
If what you have are individuals living in a home
would be violent, right? Because they have to be related.
Well, no.
Not a halfway house.
As long as they're
What's our number 4?
four unrelated can live together, whether
Yes.
they're, rehabilitating offenders or four unrelated people that
Yeah,
want
I
to
knew it
live
was some
together.
cutoff. though.
Yes.
I mean, I did it that I asked, well, is this for, I was like, are you kidding? And it was like, is this for people that have alcohol, addiction problems, drug problems? They're getting out of jail. That's what I was told. I'm beside myself. I don't know what to do. And according to your report, there is nothing that can be done for us.
It's tough in terms of what the federal government has implemented.
I understand that, but there has to be something. I mean, what about the value of our homes and everything? Should one street have to endorse something like this?
I don't think council or my office is not sympathetic. We are.
I understand
But the problem
that.
is that we can only do what the law provides for.
I think we discussed that at our,
I understand that, but there has to be something. There has to be.
Unfortunately, ma'am, our hands are tied by what the appellate courts say, and for whatever reason, our appellate courts have given these types of operations, I'm not going to say special treatment, but they have given them probably more protection than other types of uses get. And you would think at some point someone would bring an issue like this up in a lawsuit or something like that.
I mean, yeah, is that the point we're at? Do we have to, who do we have to sue? Do we sue the landlord?
I can't give you legal advice.
I know.
ma'am.
I know.
Particularly since, unfortunately,
I mean-
not unfortunately, but one of my firm represents one of these entities, so
I understand that. I'm aware of that.
But the truth of the matter is, when you look at the case law is clear that any effort we would make to regulate these group homes would be violative of their constitutional rights. And that's just because no one has ever brought a litigation where you would challenge this. And I am certain that our appellate courts never envisioned a situation like this where you have 2 or 3 of them on one street or 2 or 3 of them in the same neighborhood. I mean, they take the position that, you can't keep one, you can't keep one out of a neighborhood. The fact that
Right.
one moves in, you can't keep them out. But I can't imagine our courts have ever contemplated this type of scenario where you have 4 of them in one neighborhood. Now, would a court rule differently on that? I don't know, but obviously until someone brings it to there, we'll never know. And until that decision's made, we're stuck with what the law is today.
Does the township have any right to be an intervener? To initiate a court case?
I don't know on what basis. That's what I would.
Yeah, I guess that's the problem. I mean, it's a good point in terms of, we would have to have some case for controversy versus challenging the law. The law is just like the Constitution. I don't think the court's going to give us an advisory opinion on it. I think we're going to have to, the only thing we can do is what we don't want to do is go contrary to the existing law and be sued. That's sort of the direction. The direction council charged me with was find a way to see if we can regulate it. These are not our rules. These are the rules above us that are suppressing us that council and the township has to follow.
Right.
And we've looked at the law. I can't change what's existing, and that was unfortunate. But what I explained to council, there's other people who have tried. There's just no way in right now in terms of trying to regulate this because they're under 4 people or 4 under are supposed to be like everybody else, and we can't treat them any different than anybody else. Even though we all know there may be times that they are different than everybody else.
Oh, they're very different.
I get it.
There's no, I mean,
But the court, it's not novel to the courts. They've looked at this and they've denied almost just about every single time a challenge. This is not just unique to Pennsylvania, it's across the United States.
I know.
But it's not no solace to you living next door, I get it.
And
It's not even next door. I mean, when you think about it, there's 2 group homes for mentally challenged, then there's going to be a halfway house, and then on Brookwood, there's another community options home. I mean, I never could have envisioned that this would be what we would be looking at after living here for 43 years. It's just disgusting.
I have a question. Would a halfway house be more susceptible to regulation as opposed to these community type houses?
It could be because these community homes are not what we would call group homes under our ordinance. And I'm not sure, and maybe you can recall, I'm not sure if we define halfway house in our ordinance or something along those lines. No, we do define group homes.
We do. I can't answer that right here.
Yeah, but you're right, Mr. Arcuri. There may be, when she said group home or she said halfway house, a little bit different than what my research was looked at. Although it may, from our definition of family, may fall down that same line of 4 unrelated people.
Yeah, I think you probably have, the only benefit you'd have there is at least if you have, a rehabilitated sex offender, you would have the Megan's Law requirements. But other than that, I don't know that you'd have any additional rights because it's...
That would be my question. The school is not that far
Right.
from that location, so that would be something we'd have to make sure was not being...
Let me take a look at the halfway house scenario and see if there's any subtlety. I know we were generically calling before what was their group homes, and that's not what our ordinance calls it. So we quit using that language because a group home is something completely different. So to the extent there is case law that may cut the other way, I'll take a quick look and let you know if there's a way in.
And Ed, would they have to, if they were doing renovations to that property, would they have come in for a building permit?
Depending on what they're doing, they possibly need a building permit. I'm not sure what they're doing.
Okay.
It was mainly...
Hi.
I also live on Greenbrier for 30...
Name and address, please.
Janet Degnan, 101 Greenbrier Drive. I've been there 30 years. And I was just wondering, why, is there a reason why, or is there any way we can be notified? I mean, does Kimber Drive, is there a halfway house on 120 Kimber Drive?
The people who move into those homes and operate those homes have no responsibility that is different than anyone else when someone moves in. Just as we would not have an expectation to get a notice that, somebody's moving into a home elsewhere in town, we would not get a notification. Because under the Fair Housing Act, these individuals living in these homes are no different than you and I.
Well, it's a group home, it's a business, so don't they have different...
It's not viewed that way under the Fair Housing Act.
Aren't there special things that have to be done to the house to accommodate because it's a group home?
No.
It's a business?
But based on that, not to interrupt, we talked a little bit about this. If they are a business and they're employing people...
They're not a business... For the purposes of what you're looking at, they are not a business. This is not somebody running a business at a location. There may be a commercial aspect to this, which are the caregivers. And those caregivers are to be provided for under the Act. But that doesn't mean that that's a business that's there.
So we don't get any kind of business, any kind of local services tax from them? We don't get any kind of...
If that was the only location that they were working in, we would get the local services tax.
But we don't know that.
I can't tell you that. I can't tell you whether or not you are getting that.
So they don't come to you for any special permits or anything when there's more than 2 or 3 people?
No.
Because they're considered a family, even though it's a business?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other thing is, I lost my train of thought. It's just really ridiculous. Oh, I know. When I go to sell my home and I sell it, can someone come back and sue me?
I'm not an attorney, but I don't think it's a matter that needs to be disclosed.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at the seller disclosure rules and the forms. I'm not sure that's a category that you have to disclose.
But what happens if there's 4? And it's a dead-end street. There's only 10, 12 homes. And 4 will be...
No, the real estate
Business?
disclosure law only requires that you disclose any material defects with the property you're selling, not the neighborhood. There's plenty of case law out there that says that if someone was murdered in the house next door to you, you don't have any obligation. In fact, there's case law that says if someone was murdered in the house you're selling, you don't have an obligation to disclose that because it's not a defect with the condition of the structure, so you wouldn't have to disclose that.
Well, it's maddening.
Yeah.
Definitely maddening for all of us.
It's
So
tough for all of us.
you all don't know if this is in fact going to happen. We'll have a 4th home on our street.
We do not know that.
We don't know.
We don't know that.
Okay,
Well, how do we know when
thanks.
4 or more people who aren't related are living in a house?
It's a very difficult thing to know, and the only way we generally find these things out are when neighbors tell us that.
And then we don't really have a methodology of even finding out, because I know the house across the street from me
well, I remember that,
had at least 6 people living there.
Yeah. But I know, like in Washington, like, or maybe it's not Washington, maybe it's Canton Township. I get these things from them for various estates, and they want, they make you pay a fee, and they want to know who's renting your house. I mean, are we capable of implementing that type of regulation?
And this is what Mr. Smith's opinion goes to. You can implement regulations that generally apply across all classes of people.
You can or cannot?
You can. So if you wanted to have something where you were registering rental properties and doing yearly inspections and things, you can do that. I don't know what that gets you in this case. I know it'll get us.
We should know who was living there.
That would be the one thing you would know.
The only time I've seen that employed with some success when I represented the city of Duquesne, and they had a rent, anytime you re-rented it, they had one of the inspections. They want to get rid of any of these slumlords.
They send me one every year for various properties that are in my
And they may want to get rid of dilapidated properties. They want to make sure so they can get Ed in there or Bill or whoever and start citing them for code violations, so they were forced to fix their properties up. That's not this particular instance, and I'm sure we'd have a mass exodus of the excess people the day we were coming through, the day we were counting heads.
Exactly. What you'd be relying on the landlords actually telling you the truth as to who's living it. Presuming the landlords know. I mean, I've represented landlords in the past where Joe signs the lease and then landlord unexpectedly shows up to inspect the property and the people living there scatter like ants because there's 12 of them living there.
Right. And typically we see this in Oakland in the student housing.
Right, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was talking about. Yeah.
To extrapolate that, though, and to go back to the idea of conducting business on your property, if a person owns a property and leases it, is there a back way around determining that that's a business and that should be registered somehow?
I guess
Talk about
the Fair Housing Act says
talking
no.
about extrapolating it.
The Fair Housing Act says no, they don't consider that a business, that they can be treated like everybody else. And that's what has tied council's hand, and what I've explained. Council has unequivocally directed me to find a way to regulate it. And I can't bring them a losing argument in terms of we could get sued for this, but I can't find a way in. That's just the law that's hamstringing them. I will look at halfway houses to see if there's any sort of play there as well, if that's okay
Isn't
with the
it
board.
like, could it be a precedent of a number of, like, there's 3 or 4? Can you set a precedent, like?
Well, I think that's what Councilman Coaster said. That I don't know that the courts expect that type of saturation, but there has been some talk of density, and you can't require only so many on the street. The courts haven't looked at that we can't limit that, because no more than we can limit what kind of people live where. That's how they look at it.
Okay.
In the big picture, that sounds okay.
If you want to speak, I'm sorry, you're going to have to come up to the podium. All right, can we move on? Yeah. All right, anyone else in the audience want to speak?
Ron Books, 855 Beebot Road. I think the number one job that a community has is public safety. And it's just not crime control. It's just not who lives where and what, but also involves utilities and our highway system. I called Chief Grimes this morning because I was concerned about my favorite subject, deadfalls. This past summer, there was an effort made to trim trees and to get rid of a lot of dead wood, if I can use that term appropriately, along our roads and streets. And that was very much appreciated. I like to see that. But I see now that we've got a few more deadfalls, and unless you've taken an 8-year-old child off a respirator so that they can peacefully succumb because they were crushed by a tree, you don't know what that means to me. I don't want to see that kind of an event repeated under any circumstances. But I was informed that under the circumstances, the utility companies govern when the trees that are engaged with wiring are taken care of, eliminated, cut down. I also pointed out that there was a large, regularly accumulated amount of water at the bottom of the hill on Thomas Road at the border between Norsterbein and Peters Township. With the cold weather coming, that's going to ice up and present a real problem. If you're coming down that hill and have to apply the brakes, you may well go into a skid. And we all know what happens then. I found that the road belongs to PennDOT, apparently belongs to PennDOT, and there's a priority list about when attention is given to our road system. What my feeling is that's a threat to public safety. We've got school buses traveling that road as well as any number of commuters. I use it more frequently because it saves me from having to go through the crossroads where the traffic is increasing. But I'm hoping that something can be done. If we could establish a more direct communication line with the utility companies. I mean, frankly, I know Mr. Bergquist will have a problem if on December the 31st there's a big snowstorm and a tree severs the cable line to his home. I mean, the football games will be gone. There'll be a catastrophe.
I have satellite.
All right. But I would think that certainly something could be done with the road structure. A portion of B-Bout as it ascends the hill past the Public Works Department also had, I think it's been filled in, a large rut adjacent to the road surface that could have easily consumed the tires on an automobile. But I'm hoping again that something can be done in the form of public safety in cooperation with the utilities and our state government, state-maintained roads, quotes unquotes, to get something done about it. If not, the practical solution may be eminent domain. Take the damn road over.
Well, I think we have a pretty good working relationship with utilities. We're informed most of the time when there are outages and issues. So, and with PennDOT, it's PennDOT.
You just have to send them a letter.
So
that's what we did up on sugar cane.
Yeah.
Is there a means by which township residents can report these events? I found out that our police chief is no longer the chief public safety officer, that now belongs in the realm of the fire department.
The emergency management administrator. But if like all problems that the township faces,
come to you.
If you have no, it's not me. All problems the township faces, yeah, you can send us an email. You can go into public stuff. You can call into the building. We're very responsive to those things. So.
Okay.
I can call PennDOT and report it.
I'll do that, but again, I have about as much influence with them as I do with.
I was going to say, good luck with that.
Well, usually when they get some notice that there's a dangerous condition, they have an opportunity.
And I think PennDOT actually, in the last few years, has been fairly responsive to us. So we have a good working relationship.
We'll give it a try. I just want to get the problem solved before we have some dastardly accident.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience like to take an opportunity to... Oh, your 5 minutes were on.
Talk
talking about roadways, our street is right off of Brookwood, and there's a creek that goes underneath Brookwood. One side of it has a guardrail on it, and the other one doesn't. And I questioned that with Mr. Silvestri probably 5 years ago. But that roadway is very deceptive. Like it's flat, and at night, and if it snows, it's almost like you can't see the roadway. And now we're getting all these patio homes and townhouses on Brookwood, so there's going to be more traffic on that road. So I think maybe that's something that should be looked at.
Let us take another look.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you all for what you do for us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to unfinished business, which is the resolution adopting the Peters Township drug and alcohol policy.
Since we last met, Mrs. Merrill and I have had an opportunity to work through her concerns and recommendations. I think as a result of that, you actually have a policy in front of you that's actually better than what you had before. And it's my recommendation, once again, that council adopt a resolution enacting a new drug and alcohol policy.
All right.
So moved.
Resolution number 110118.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That would be 6-0.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make an additional comment, I did want to thank Mr. Lauer for giving me an opportunity. I did also send to him a note and copied, I think you and Mr. Kozer, that in addition to the policy changes, unfortunately that creates additional work because there are things in the handbook and the job descriptions that need to be now updated to support and correlate with this. So there's more work ahead, so we'll have more things to approve coming up.
Okay. On to new business. First item is authorize the appropriate township officials to execute a 5-year labor agreement with the International Association of Firefighters Local 4750.
We have been meeting with representatives from the Firefighters Union since the middle of summer. We have reached a tentative agreement that provides for a 5-year contract with 2.5% increases in the first 3 years, a 2.75% increase in the fourth year, and a 3% increase in the fifth year. In addition to that, employees will be contributing more to their pension. And from my perspective, the good thing about this is that at that point, the funding for this defined contribution plan will mirror the funding that is in the defined benefit plan of the police department, which I think will negate going forward any discussion about creating a defined benefit plan for the firefighters. One of the things in the current contract is that we lack the ability to assign people to jobs based upon skills and abilities. We now will have that ability to do that, so that people that we've trained for a function will continue to do that function when it's in the best interest of the township. There's a new position created. It's called an advanced emergency medical technician. This is someone who has pretty much the same skills as a paramedic, but the differential in cost will actually be less, so to allow us to continue to deliver that emergency medical service at a reduced cost. The insurance deductible will increase from $250 to $750, which means that the firefighters will join the public works and the administrative employees with having this higher deductible. And at the next time we're negotiating with the police department, we'll hope to bring them in line. Under the drug and alcohol policy that you just adopted, firefighters will be deemed to be safety-sensitive employees, which allows for a broader array of drug testing than would otherwise be possible. There'll be a requirement that sick leave and vacation be used prior to the coverage under the disability program. We've never had a process for scheduling vacations inside the fire department that's created problems. We now have a very detailed method for doing that, which I think will assist in being able to maintain staffing. There's a reduction in the use of sick leave for care for family members under the Family Medical Leave Act. And there is a provision to allow for payout of sick leave upon termination of employment after 25 years or 55 years of service. There are other items in here that are cleaning up language. I think this is a fair contract for both parties, and it's my recommendation that it be approved.
All right. Any comments?
I'd like to thank Mr. Lauer again for letting me feed his emails with some comments and thank him for answering my questions. I think that there are a lot of things in here that will allow the fire chief and deputy to manage the department more effectively. I'd like to move that we authorize the township officials to execute this 5-year agreement with the International Association of Firefighters, Local 4750.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion?
My only comment would be, I welcome the fact that this is a homegrown settlement, that we were able to achieve it without that other process.
That other process, yeah. That other process that causes us to get provisions that nobody likes, so.
So thank you to both sides.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That would be 6-0. Next item, approval for recording purposes of the loss and plan of lots as shown on drawings prepared by James E. Lash, dated October 4th, 2018, for Richard and Deborah Lawson and Tracy Lawson.
This is a simple subdivision which, in essence, changes the orientation of the lots. It removes a line that's in this direction and establishes a division of the property in this direction. So it doesn't create any new lots.
Doesn't create any nonconformances either, I presume, right?
That's correct.
Okay. I see that all the Planning Commission conditions have been satisfied, so I'll make a motion that we approve for recording purposes the loss and plan of lots as shown on drawings prepared by James E. Lash, dated October 4th, 2018.
All right, any discussion?
I just do have a question about the purpose of this and whether or not is Union Township making a similar arrangement? I mean, because we're now swapping parcels. It was just a question. I've never seen this before.
Go for it.
The plan is being reviewed by Union Township.
So if they say no, then what happens?
They can't record.
Can't do it.
Okay.
So this is contingent on,
So it's
so this
contingent.
motion would be contingent then on.
I don't think it should be contingent.
No, I think what they need is approval from both parties, and I don't think making it contingent is necessary.
So
if they don't get approval from it, will not be recorded.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That would be 6-0. Finally, ordinance approving an amendment to the 2018 Peters Township operating budget.
We had a public hearing on this at the last meeting. For the most part, these are adjustments that are made annually to adjust for particularly differences in where salaries have been allocated within a department. In addition to that, there are contained in here an adjustment to the appropriation to accommodate the additional payment for Rolling Hills Park. That's perhaps the most significant change. Another change was one that was discussed at the time of the bid award for the fire station, was to accommodate the renovation of the fire station. So it's my recommendation that council adopt the 2018 amendment to the 2018 operating budget.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That is also 6-0. That moves us on to payroll and bills.
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the payroll and bills. I find them to be in order. Once again, I make a motion that we approve the same.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That is also 6-0. Do you want to discuss anything under correspondence?
No.
Okay, perfect. What about reports?
I do. One of the things that the council has asked for is a financial statement from the ambulance service. That is included in the docket. It's the last report. What it shows is
What it shows is we're subsidizing the ambulance company, right?
Yes, that's what it says.
Substantially subsidizing the ambulance company.
But what it also tells you is that the ambulance service, without that subsidy, it would be running at a deficit that would be problematic because they are just covering their expenses. In fact, the equipment that was bought was actually financed by the VFW. One of the things that come out of this that I think is going to be good is that Mr. MacArthur, the commander for the VFW, has committed to meeting with myself and the fire chief and the police chief at the beginning of the year to talk about operations and methods in which to evaluate the effectiveness of the delivery of service. But what this confirms to me is what I always believed, was that the township gets senior citizen subscriptions, but what you're really doing is exactly what Mr. Arcuri is suggesting, is that you're providing support for the ambulance service, which allows them to continue to deliver that service. And where that is a significant sum of money, if in fact we were running the ambulance service, we would be on the hook for the entire operation.
I understand that, but like, what leverage, then what are they going to do? They don't care as long as we're subsidizing it. What gives them an incentive to try to keep, make the money so that we don't have to contribute as much? I mean, you're talking, according to this financial statement, they are at almost a $35,000 deficit, and that's after we give them approximately $99,000. So I mean, they'd be really in the hole if it wasn't for us. But when you go and look at the trips, I mean, this is the November statement. Year to date, ambulance responses was for senior citizens was 370. I mean, that's a lot of money to be shelling out. I mean, they have to take more fiscal responsibility here. I mean, I don't want to be the Grinch or anything like that, but that's ridiculous.
But what I would tell you is that if you look at ambulance services throughout southwestern Pennsylvania, they're all in this same struggle. They're reimbursed.
They say good things get better and bad things go away.
Well, you don't want your ambulance service to go away.
I'm not suggesting that, but I mean, there has to be some incentive for them to do something. Otherwise, we'd be like the federal government, just shell out money and shell out money.
Well, and I don't want to pile on, but I've always been concerned about this. And I do think that the particular document they shared is not very transparent as far as what their operating expenses are. There's over $500,000 in wages. There's other items on here that $500,000 is not an insignificant amount of money, and I don't know how that breaks down. But those are the kind of questions I think, if we are subsidizing them, we need to have a little bit more understanding of what's going on with the money. And you said earlier that you weren't sure that this was separate from the VFW.
Well, I think this is now, right?
So,
well, let me explain what you have in front of you, is that when they file their 990, they file it jointly with the VFW. One of the things that I know from looking at that 990, I know who provides their accounting services. And so one of the things that Mr. MacArthur did was to go to their accountants and ask them to prepare this statement. So this statement is coming from their accountants. This is not a statement that's been generated by the VFW. So from that perspective, I think you can rely upon the numbers that you see here. The only thing I might disagree with you is I think this is in excruciating detail to some extent when you start looking at expenditures that are as low as $250. And I realize that you look at wages and it's a large number, but again, they're not unlike us. They're delivering services, so I can guarantee you that's where the bulk of their money is going to be, is in those wages. As much as you may be concerned about this, I'm concerned
Who
about.
are they paying rent to?
Who they're paying rent to.
Who are they paying rent to? $18,000.
I don't know that. I'd have to find out. But one of the things, like I said, we intend to do come January is to sit down and.
Are we getting it? Isn't that our building?
No, that is not.
Who owns the building?
I don't know whether VFW owns that building or at one point in time that land was owned by the school district, but I thought it was transferred to the VFW when the station was built.
I'm not suggesting that, we just withdraw the funds or not, but I mean, there's absolutely no incentive for them to ever try to cut costs or do anything to help their financial situation if they know they're going to get $99,000 out of us every year.
I don't necessarily agree with you. They realize that they are in the hole this year with what they have. I'm not so sure they would have had prior knowledge of, their financial condition to the level it's being provided here.
Oh, we've never seen this.
I know we've not seen it,
Yeah.
but I'm not internally aware of.
Oh, I think they would know what their own situation is, but we have never seen this prior to this.
Again, they are going to meet with.
Yes.
With us
I mean,
in January.
Is there-
We'll be able to.
As long as you're satisfied that, they're trying to do the right thing, I don't have a problem with it. I just, we've been trying to get this information for years.
And I've explained to them that.
Is there a potential that instead of handing over that amount of money the first of the year, whenever you actually write the check, that it can be paid in different payments until we can hear a little bit better of what's going on?
You will have we'll have had multiple meetings before this payment gets made, so.
Well, I'm just saying, I'd rather break it into parts.
Well, I don't agree with that because I don't know what their financial need. They might have a lot of outlay.
Right, cash flow.
Yeah, they might need a big outlay in the beginning of the year.
again,
I'm not going to penalize them.
As much as we should focus on this, we should also be, and it's actually part of my concern, is to get an understanding so that we make sure that we're delivering the best emergency medical service to township residents. That's really the other side of this equation, and that's part of what I want to meet with them in January.
Okay.
No, I'm not done yet.
All right.
I mean, Frank zeroed in on what this council's contribution is. To me, when I looked at this, the shortfall that I was amazed with is their membership drive is generating $83,000. I would have presumed that this community, with the nominal request that they're asking for annually, would be coming forth with a hell of a lot more money than that.
I would agree with that.
It's not top of mind until something happens.
Well, but it's got to be something that's there to be able to help you when something happens. So, I mean, it's the story of the fire department and their membership drive, and
Yes.
it's very much evident here that I think we need to encourage them to look for greater response.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying
Well,
raise the amount, but it's the level of participation that I think.
And maybe it's an area where we can help them in some regard. I think that's the other thing we should be prepared to do is to help them achieve those kind of things. Because the alternative is for this to become a municipal service, and you really want to avoid that if you can.
Absolutely.
Well, according to the Washington County assessment records, we own the property on which the ambulance garage
It
is.
says Peters Township tax exempt.
Right.
Yeah, that
But it
doesn't mean
says-
we necessarily own it.
So, it doesn't say Veterans of Foreign Wars, though, either. So,
Why? I mean, that doesn't make any sense because.
Let me find
because I'm just curious, because if it was,
If you look under that last line under expenses, it says funds transferred to post, $5,000.
It says a negative number,
Right.
which means the post sent money to them.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
And then they're deducting, but they must have paid I'm assuming they paid the post.
I have no idea, but I
$18,000.
will find out. I will get you the answer.
Well, it says Peters Township exempt property. The address of the property owner is 610 East McMurray Road, so Guess it doesn't matter since we're not paying tax on it anyway.
We didn't pay to construct the building.
Right.
I'll find out.
So,
I appreciate you getting this, Mr. Lowe.
I think we all
I appreciate it.
I'm sure it wasn't like easy.
Well, it's been an interesting, but I think, I'll tell you what, I think through the process of attempting to acquire this, we've reached an understanding that the township has an interest in the ambulance service and its success. And so I think based upon that, we're going to have a discussion. So,
Thank you.
Anyone else want to chip in before we move along? All right. After reports, miscellaneous.
I don't have any.
I do, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure you're shocked.
Immensely.
A while back, I had talked to the chief of police about traffic, and Mr. Brooks brought it up again, the intersection of Donaldson's Crossroads, and how it's wonderful to have synchronized lights, except when someone decides to turn left into the CVS. And traffic stops completely, whether the lights are synchronized or not. I really think that we need to have a conversation with CVS about either figuring out a different way to create an entrance there, creating some barrier or whatever you want to call it so that people can't turn left, or pushing it back further. I don't know what. But again, for all the money we're investing in this, if someone decides to break the law and turn left, everything grinds to a halt. I've received several phone calls from people sitting in traffic. So that's one thing I wanted to make a point about. And another traffic issue, and Mr. Berquist may have missed this, the potential stop sign at Sugar Camp and Churchill, and whether or not we've heard any follow-up from PennDOT about that and Turkey Foot.
That would be like way too quick to get an answer from PennDOT.
So. People have been interested. I passed the information along, and I just...
Actually, I got an email today from somebody who lives in that intersection whose response was, this is long overdue. So.
All right. Anyone else? Anyone else have any items for the next agenda?
I had a miscellaneous thing. What
Sure.
happened to the bids? Didn't we get bids on the demolition or not?
Next, they put it out for bid, they're not back there.
Okay. Thank you, I'm sorry.
No. Anyone else?
Speaking of bids, we talked a while back, or I asked a while back about contracts and RFPs for some of the professional services. I know you were up to your eyeballs in budgeting. Where are we with that? Or do we know?
I would have to have direction from council to tell us to go out and bid those professional services. So we have not done anything with bidding engineering services, traffic engineering services. We haven't done any of that.
Have you
We
been
won't
told
do.
yet what the prices are going to be? We're putting a...
We're starting to get those in.
Because that was my question, because we get that information after we've approved the budget without knowing what the new numbers are. And we have several contracts that are longer than 3 years. So...
Did we bid insurance and all that?
We're in the process of bidding insurance. The policies run out February 1st. We've already designated brokers and assigned insurance companies, and they're preparing those bids.
All right.
So the answer is, it would be my recommendation that we do it. If not for all of them, at least for the ones that we've had for several years, or else we verify what the costs are going to be and council can agree to that.
Well, we don't have to. I mean, if we get to the meeting in January and those issues come up, if somebody's too high, we can always just ask that one be sent out for an RFP.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's just more effort for the staff, maybe unnecessarily.
Right.
Well, I appreciate that can happen that way. It's just that it drags on because the people are engaged in different things already. You can't cut them off completely. So if that's the way everyone agrees.
I'm just speaking, I mean, if something comes in and it doesn't look right, then I don't have a problem with saying we're not going to approve that. Let's just send it out.
In the past, we've taken action when there's been an increase to rebut the increase.
Okay. Unless there's Anything else? This meeting?
Mr. Berkowitz, wait. I am disappointed that you did not congratulate the Peters Township High School football team on making it to the playoffs.
They didn't win.
Oh, my goodness.
Money on that,
Well, I think they did a great job.
So do I.
I agree.
Go Indians.
We have a brief.
And while we're at it, we might as well mention the girls' soccer team.
Absolutely.
Had another fine season. We mentioned that the girls' field hockey team won the WPL championship.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other things. They won.
That's true.
And apparently,
I knew I'd get you started.
apparently the stink bugs are still alive because I just had one crawl down my arm. So,
We're not immune to stink bugs.
Here we go.
Doesn't surprise me. All right.
the most interesting thing that's happened in my 3 years here.
Adjourned.